Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the Benchwarmers Sports Talk Podcast. And as always, today we are riding the bench across a couple of different sports today. We'll start with some big stories going on in the hockey world, maybe touch upon a little bit of NBA, and then finish off with some Champions League round of 16 predictions. We hope that everyone in Canada is having a good family day long weekend, and we hope that the people in the rest of the world had a good Valentine's Day. Sucks they can't get the Monday off. But Jacob, how are you doing?
I think Valentine's Day is super overrated, but that's just my opinion. I'm okay. I'm excited for the long weekend and back to grind tomorrow morning.
Yeah, there you go. So hope you guys are enjoying your day off if you are lucky enough to have that.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, let's just get right into it and start talking about hockey. And I try to keep a pretty balanced view on this. Try to talk about a whole variety of teams, but I have to be honest. The Penguins have probably been the number one storyline in the NHL this week, with their new appointment of Ron Hextall as their new general manager and Brian Burke as their president of hockey operations. So I'll start with you, Jacob, before I get into my thoughts. What do you think about the hiring, and what direction do you think this is going to take the team?
I think this is a great hire. I really do. I do like Ron Hextall, which I find weird. He played Philadelphia most of his life. Now he's working for the team he's hated most of his career. Brian Brooks going to bring some good Canadian talent to the team as he's done for so many others. Um, I like Berkey. I do like Berkey. I liked him as an analyst. He showed no emotion, which was always fun. He was always kind of like that guy on the show when he was on Sportsnet when he was doing like Leaf games and Vancouver games and stuff like that. But I think it's a great pickup. He's not going to have any influence on, who's coming in, who's going out. He's going to be a scout, so he's going to have a lot of say, but he's not going to be able to do it himself like a general manager. Hextall, look what he did with that team in Philadelphia. Like, look what he did with that team. It's so he drafted well, he traded well, and that team is playing well. So I think if you're a Pens fan, you should be very excited. Like the Flyers are above Pittsburgh, like by a bunch, by 3 points, by 3 points, and they almost made the Stanley Cup Finals last year. So um, maybe he'll do something good for the team.
Yeah, I hope so. I like the appointments. I do. I think that Hextall, and first, a lot of people are going to say, like, oh, why did we hire a Flyers legend to be the Penguins general manager? Like, isn't that a bit sketchy? Apparently, Hextall has, like, serious connections to Pittsburgh. His dad played for the Penguins, like,
Yep.
way back when the team, like, first existed, like, in the 60s and 70s. And so he has actually a really strong connection to Pittsburgh. So I think the fact that he was a Flyer for like his entire career isn't going to be an issue.
And
Um,
can I just say something real quick that just
yeah, yeah,
reminded me?
for
Um,
sure.
Hextall has connections with Gibson, John Gibson, the goaltender. So maybe he'll be able to bring him over, and then you'll actually have a goalie.
Yeah, I was going to get into some trade rumors in a little bit, and you're absolutely right that John Gibson is a name that's kind of been swirling around, as has Marc-Andre Fleury's name.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Yep. Here's the thing with Hextall too that I really like. Like you said, he did a fantastic job in Philadelphia.
Hmm.
Reports are the reason why he left in Philly was that he was which is very surprising considering if you guys know who Ron Hextall was as a player, he would literally fight referees. Like the guy was a psychopath on the ice, like crazy
Hey,
temper
he
issues.
was
But
wild.
apparently as a retired player, he's a super mellow and shy guy, and so he actually it was cited as being communication issues that led to him leaving Philadelphia in the management role, in the
Really?
sense of he was kind of like a I'm gonna be on my own and do my work, and there's a disconnect between ownership. And so with Burke coming in, Hextall is reporting to Burke, who's then reporting to Morehouse and Burkle and Lemieux, who, if you guys don't know that, that's just our ownership and like CEO of the team. And so there's essentially is Burke's being the middleman. And I think if anyone knows Brian Burke is certainly not afraid to share his opinion. So
Nope.
I think it's a really good balance where Hextall doesn't have to have that direct line of communication with ownership. He just has to go to Burke, and then Burke can advocate for Hextall and for his own opinions as well. The thing
I
with
think your biggest
no to go
problem.
sorry,
Sorry,
go
go.
ahead.
Okay, quickly. I think your biggest problem with Burke is he relies too much on, like, when he's in a mindset, he's gonna stick to that. When he drafted Morgan Riley, he said he didn't even look at anyone else in that draft. He said, "I'm drafting him." So that may be a concern for you guys.
That's literally where I was about to go with it. It's like you're reading my mind.
Oh my
Yeah, I
god.
was gonna say the thing with Burke is he's very set in his opinions, and that a lot of those opinions might be a little bit too old stock for me. Like there's a really funny thing flying around where Burke was talking about the Lightning, and he was talking about because they are obviously the defending Stanley Cup champions. And he was talking about how their defense are like strong and physical, and like literally everyone was like, the Tampa Bay Lightning are probably the best team at playing a skill and speed game in the NHL, which is why they won the Stanley Cup. And it's hilarious how Brian Burke's takeaway was, they have big, strong defensemen. It's like, well, no, like Victor Hedman is also one of the best puck-moving defensemen in the NHL.
Yeah, he's definitely someone you want on the team for sure.
Right, and it's not just because of his size; it's because of his skill and his skating ability. So the thing with Burke is, I think he might be a little bit too old school, but that's why I'm glad he's in as a hockey ops guy because, like you said, he's a very good scout, and I want him there as like an extra set of eyes, but not as a guy who's going to be making decisions. Because the last thing we
Right.
need is trading Chris Letang for Milan Lucic. Right? Like if we start signing all these physical guys, I'm gonna be angry at the hiring. But
hmm
that's why I'm a little bit apprehensive because I know Burke wants control and Burke's that type of guy. Like he's a dominant personality. But I think that as long as he doesn't make any final roster decisions and he's more of just like a advisor, then it should play out pretty well.
But I don't think Hextall would ever do that because look at the team that he's crafted in Philadelphia. It's a very speedy team, not
Yeah,
too
he's
much
he's
grit.
crafted a skill team over there in Phil, and naturally, Philadelphia is going to be associated with grit because of
Grit.
like the whole Broad Street Bullies historically. But
Yeah.
you're right, I wouldn't classify this Flyers team as being an overly physical team.
I
I
mean,
I really think the only teams that still play that brand of hockey are like the Islanders,
Boston,
Boston,
uh,
Columbus to a bit of to
Cal-
some extent.
Calgary and Edmonton, they go at it.
And here's the thing too with Edmonton is I think that it's wrong that they're trying to play that style considering you have two of the best skill players in the world in McDavid and Draisaitl.
Yeah, but when that's like the only people on your team, you need guys on the fourth line to like. I think the Leafs this year is that's why it stands out to me a lot is without Wayne Simmons, I've noticed their physicality has gone down a significant amount. So the Leafs have always been this team. Oh, they're a pushover. Oh, they're weak. Oh, they're a bunch of like. I think teams need to have at least 3 or 4 guys who are able to drop gloves whenever anyone needs it.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think the thing is like now those types of players also have to contribute in other ways. And like
Right.
I can think of a couple of players like Tom Wilson, which is a very, he's a very polarizing figure and as a Penguins fan and as a hockey fan, I dislike a lot of the actions that he's done over the years. He has crossed the line multiple times, but
Yep.
you also can't deny that he's a pest to play against. He's
hmm
going to get physical on the body, but Tom Wilson's also capable of putting up a 60, 70 point season.
Yeah,
Like
same
he's
same
a
thing with like
good
Nazem
hockey player.
Kadri. Yeah, same thing with like Nazem Kadri.
Yeah,
Everyone
old school
hated him.
Nazem Kadri.
Yeah,
Absolutely. He was a pest to play
play
against, but he would
against.
also produce. Patrick Hornquist is a key
Yep.
reason why the Penguins won those Stanley Cups. And in fact, I think one of the reasons why the Penguins are 1 for 21 on the power play over the last 8 games is because we've lost the net front presence of Patrick Hornquist and we're trying to figure out how we're going to make the power play work.
It's the
So,
same thing. It's the same thing with Simmons. Is he's that net front presence? He's that guy that
absolutely.
that like he reminds me a lot of Nazem Kadri. He's producing. He's pissing people off, and he's fighting. When was the last time a Leaf fought? Besides Jason Spezza in game 4 last year against Columbus. So I know the Leafs right now are suffering without Simmons. Although the Leafs still are first in the division and in the league. They're still suffering, and they need Simmons back as soon as they can. Obviously, a broken hand is nothing to rush because I don't want him to get back and oh, there he goes, he's out for the rest of the season, which would suck because that's the whole reason we didn't bring him here.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a significant injury. But yeah,
Hmm.
also the Leafs are first in the NHL, which
Oh, I'm not.
I
Yeah,
mean,
I know it's crazy.
granted, with the whole interdivisional stuff, it doesn't really matter too much, and a lot of people are going to cite like, yeah, well, if we played Ottawa 17 times, we'd be first in the NHL too. But you can't take away that the Leafs are having a really good season this year.
This,
Austin Matthews is on pace for a goal a game,
yeah,
which is insane.
this is the one Leafs team in a long time that I can look at and be confident about them winning. Like, yeah, they lost last game. They had a very sloppy third period, but at the end of the day, these are only 1 goal games that they're losing, 1 2 goal games that they're losing. Other than that, they're winning everything else. So this is like one team where I can look at and be like, okay, we're gonna win. It's 2-1 in the third. I trust that we're gonna win, and we have most of the time. So yeah. There's gonna be an asterisk probably beside them because everyone hates on the Leafs because they're Canada's team, quote unquote. So even even through all the negativity, they're still producing, and you can't really deny them that.
No, definitely not. A question that I had for you regarding the Leafs,
Mm,
and you talk about it. Um, One of the big things in winning playoff games and winning the Stanley Cup is being able to win that 2-1, 3-2 hockey game. And
yeah.
the Leafs have started to take steps in that direction, I think, this year. But obviously, their last game was a 2-1 loss to the Montreal Canadiens. And Montreal is developing this season into what could be one of the main threats to Toronto in the playoffs. Montreal took out the Penguins last year in the playoffs.
Yep.
Now, granted, that was just a best of 5 series, not a best of 7. But
Hmm.
really, in that series, the Penguins outplayed the Canadians, but couldn't score. Carey Price was
Carey
solid. The
Price.
Canadians defended well. And so, yeah, my question to you is, and granted, we're still very early on in the season,
Mm.
but there are a lot of people who are starting to say that Montreal's going to fall off and might fall out of the playoffs. I don't think that's true. But what's your thoughts on Montreal? And then with them beating the Leafs 2-1 in the last game, are you worried that Montreal, if Carey Price gets hot for a couple of games, they could challenge Toronto in a playoff series?
I mean, I didn't think Montreal would be this good. I still had them making the playoffs because I still understand their young core is very good, and Carey Price, best goaltender in the league. But I don't know about falling off. They may fall down a spot or two, but they'll still make the playoffs. The only issue I have with Montreal is the lack of veteranship on that team. You have Brendan Gallagher, you have Jeff Petrie, you have Carey Price, and then you got a bunch of young guys. Like that. They remind me a lot of the Leafs of a few years ago. And they can make the playoffs for sure. It's just when they get into the playoffs, what's going to happen? It's kind of up for debate, I guess. Um, I don't know if they'll fall off to the point. Like Montreal scares me. Like every time we play them, I still get worried because Carey Price stole that game. There's no question about it. He stole that game. Um, I just don't know if the problem is I don't know if he can do that every single game. I don't. And yeah, Montreal I still think will come second in that division, and it'll be hopefully we'll have fans for the playoffs, and it will be a very very good playoff series between two elite teams.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then speaking of playoff series, it's really funny what's going on in the regular season right now.
Mm.
Because of COVID and postponed games and canceled games and all of that, the St. Louis Blues and the Arizona Coyotes are going to play each other 7 times in a row during the regular season schedule. And so today is actually the seventh of those games. They've split the first six 3-3. And so everyone is making jokes about how it's a playoff series in the middle of the regular season. And game 7 is actually a game 7 because they split the first game. First game's 3-3,
Yeah.
which I think is really funny. And
But I
so
mean,
a couple of questions.
yeah.
Okay, I mean, let's just pen it over to you for your thoughts because I was
No,
going
no,
to
no.
ask,
Ask the question, yeah.
does this matter? Like, does this matter? Like, if the Coyotes win, or even if they lose tonight and technically lose the series, like, I feel like if the Blues and Coyotes played in the playoffs and it
Mm.
went to a seventh game, everyone would be shocked. So my question is, can Arizona stick with these teams, or are we just seeing this is the regular season when the playoffs come around, St. Louis will take care of business?
I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't like Bennington's play right now. He doesn't remind me of that goaltender that took his team from last in the division to Stanley Cup champions a few years ago. Um, this is interesting because you and I have both said they're our meme team. You know that the Arizona Coyotes are the meme team of the podcast. Um, I stick by it, although I don't like what's happened in the few recent years with the Coyotes. But they do have fans, so it is somewhat realistic, which I enjoy watching. Um, my biggest concern with the Coyotes is a lot like the Leafs, it's a lot like every team. It's a lot like Montreal. Is the goaltending. Darcy Kemper needs to be Vezina worthy when he's playing, and sometimes he's not. And that Coyote team has shown a lot of inconsistencies. Like they scored late to tie the game, and take it to like the most recent game where they lost in overtime. They had the lead. They had the lead, lost the lead, then they tied it up late in the game, and they lost in overtime. And Antti Raanta looks shaky, and Antti Raanta is a big liability to me. I've never really liked him as a goaltender, not in the sense that I don't like the guy. He never when he's in net. I'm kind of like, I don't know which way this is going. Same thing with Hutchinson. You're like, I don't know which way this is going. And I'm sure same with Jari. Jari, the way he's been playing recently, yeah, it's questionable. Or Murray, the way he's playing. Oh man, that if as a
Yeah,
Senators
when
fan,
you're
you
in
better
front
be
of
pissed.
the Ottawa Senators roster, you can't be too critical on the goalie. But I get what
Oh,
you
I
mean. He's
mean,
also been struggling.
come on, come on. We knew they'd be bad, but this bad. Murray is posting one of the worst save percentages and goals against averages this season. There's no
Yeah, no, that's a
excuse.
fair point. It's this fact of how poor he's been, where it's like you
Yeah.
can't even really
Like,
justify it, even with him playing on Ottawa. Like at least on Detroit, Jonathan Bernier was still like decent,
yeah.
but
Like he
like
well, I mean,
who.
they finally won some games after going like 400 days without winning with
Well, yeah, I
Greiss
was
in
gonna
it.
say those are a couple of crazy statistics. Is that the Detroit Red Wings hadn't won a game in which Jonathan Bernier wasn't their goalie in like 400 days until they finally did,
Yeah, which is
and then
ridiculous.
the Oilers won a game in which McDavid and
David
Draisaitl
Draisaitl.
didn't score a point
Uh-huh.
for the first time since 2017, which is insane because
That's
I think that just speaks to like
yeah.
how the Oilers have no depth. Like
Yeah.
everyone literally jokes about like, oh, if McDavid and Draisaitl don't score, the Oilers don't win. I didn't know that that was actually statistically true. Like they hadn't won in 3 years. Like that's insane. Like people make the jokes of like, oh, if you shut down Crosby and Malkin, like the Penguins won't win, which is true most of the time. But like occasionally, the Penguins have enough talent where like they can get a win without Crosby or Malkin carrying them. The Oilers did that. That's just not possible apparently.
No, it's legitimately not a thing. It's kind of scary to think that the Oilers were a playoff team that almost went to the conference finals a few years ago. Um, where were we? We lost my train of thought.
You were talking about goalies and
Goaltending.
Bennington with
Oh
the
yeah.
Blues.
So okay. So back to Murray. We all knew Ottawa would be bad. We knew it. There's no question about it. But when you sign Matt Murray to a 4 year, like 25, was it 25, 26 million dollar contract, and
Yeah, he's
playing
made. I think he's making 6.25 a year.
and he's playing this bad, like this is bad, bad. Like this is AHL bad, and this is your main guy. Like Hogberg, their backup is playing better than him. It goes to show that this Matt Murray deal is not looking very good for Ottawa.
Yeah, and the thing with goalies too is like they can be so streaky from year to year, which is why I think way back when they signed Binnington,
Hmm.
like re-signed Binnington, I believe it was just a 2-year deal.
Yeah, I think so. It wasn't a very
So
good
I
one.
think he's either a free agent this summer or next summer, which I think was really good for St. Louis and for Binnington in a way, even though it kind of backfired because it gave Binnington a chance to prove that he was actually a really good goalie and they weren't going to, throw money at him just because of one good playoff performance. And then for the Blues, it's also like, well, we're not going to throw money at you off of one good playoff performance. And
Yeah.
so I think that, you look at Matt Murray already, that contract looks like it's going to be potentially problematic. Sergei Bobrovsky's contract in
Oh my
Florida,
god. Oh
when he's
my
first
god.
signed that contract, people thought that that was going to be the difference that was going to push Florida up. And now we're looking at it, a year and a half later, and it's looking like that might be the contract that's going to hold Florida back from taking the next step because there's
Buddy.
so much talent on that roster. But like when you have $10 million a year going to a goalie who's not playing particularly well, that's really hard to, compensate for.
He is playing so bad. Oh my God, he should have never left Columbus because now he looks like an idiot. And his contract makes Florida look so stupid. Like last year, he didn't even have a 900 save percentage. He was below. He was like 880 or something like that, which is ridiculous. This guy beat Tampa Bay, arguably the best team in the league that season for the past like 6 seasons. So, um, yeah, that here's my problem with throwing so much money at goaltenders. And you said it 100%. They can get streaky. Like they can get really streaky. Carey Price has at least played up to that contract he has. He at least has been able to do that. He took Montreal to the playoffs for a few years. Florida missed the playoffs last year. Florida missed. Tell me how Florida missed the playoffs last year in a COVID environment. Oh no, they did. They made it. No, and they just lost in the first round.
Yeah,
So
well, they made the whole 24 like gimmicky playoff thing.
right, but in an actual series, they wouldn't have made it.
No,
Like
they would have
they wouldn't have
fallen
made it.
short because, well, they play in a stacked division, right? So they're behind Tampa, Toronto, Boston in the normal division. And then with the depth of the Metro, they were just behind the wildcard teams.
But it doesn't matter because you bring in Bobrovsky, who is expected to change that team 180, and
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The expectation for them is to make the playoffs. You're
I mean,
absolutely right.
he changed it 180. Just they didn't do it in the right way, and that contract looks so bad. Like that one looks worse than Matt Murray, obviously because of how long and how much. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the other thing too is if you look at, if you look at teams that have won the Stanley Cup and you look at how much money they were paying their goalies, I'm not sure what Vasilevsky's contract was
it wasn't
last year with
I don't
Tampa.
Think I don't think it was the contract he re-signed.
But you're right, it's not the one that he just re-signed. He was on
Yeah.
less money. So I don't know that money. I don't know that value for certain. What I do know is that the Blues won the cup with Binnington on a rookie deal.
Yep.
The Penguins won the cup with Murray on a rookie deal. And even then, Marc-Andre Fleury, who turned into the backup, he was only making like $5
Yep.
a year. And then the Capitals won with Holtby on not a super expensive contract. Like he was probably only making like $4 or $5 million a year.
I thought it was
Six?
like 5.5.
Yeah.
But
It might be
even then,
between 5
5
and
and a half.
6. You're right.
But it's
And
no 10 million.
exactly. So my point is, and there's a stat in the NFL to kind of just do a comparison, and it was that teams that have won the Super Bowl in like the last 10 years, the leading rusher for the team was making like $2.5 million or less at the running back position. And there's a big thing in the NFL saying you don't pay running backs because you don't win like that. And I mean, Leonard Fournette was the leading rusher. You go back to some of those Patriot teams, they weren't paying their starting running back a lot. When the Seahawks won the Super Bowl, they weren't paying their running back a lot of money. And so I think you can make a similar comparison with the NHL in the sense of you need to have a good goalie, but you can't be sinking money from the cap because of the cap space into the goalie position, because you need to be able to have a balanced roster outside of that. And so we look at some of these teams like Florida that have $10 million in goaltending. Montreal with Price and Allen combined have, I think, like $12 million.
Yeah.
Robin Lehner and Marc-Andre Fleury, I think, is $13 million collectively. And so when I look at those teams, I really like Vegas, for example, as a team. I think they are extremely talented. I think that they are Stanley Cup contenders, but I won't pick them just because of that statistic.
I mean, the problem, like look at those guys, Murray, Binnington, and those guys who won the cup on on rookie deals. It's the reason why is because they're just playing, they're just having fun. They're just out there to just prove themselves. And then you give guys like Bobrovsky a huge ass contract like this, and now they got some pressure. Now they have expectations. When people, like, no one was noticing when Bobrovsky was doing poorly in Columbus because he wasn't getting paid $10 million for 10 years. So I think throwing that much money at goaltenders is stupid, and I don't think teams should do it. Like Freddie, I'm concerned for Frederik Andersen because he's going to have to, either he walks in free agency after this season or they repay him some stupid amount. And that means someone else is going to have to go. So,
yeah, I think he walks because he'll want like $8 million at least, probably.
Some team will pay him. Some team will pay him the money.
I can see him going to the Oilers or like something like that. A team that's good but that really needs a goaltender. And then, like you said, maybe it pans out, maybe it doesn't. The other thing is, like, it's a good point that you bring up in terms of the inconsistency and the streakiness of goalies. Fans of teams that have good goalies don't understand what it's like, or like how much of a luxury
Importance.
that is. And
Yeah.
I like New York Rangers fans. Like, I was watching when the Rangers were playing the Penguins like 2 weeks ago, and the Rangers announcers were talking about their goaltending issues. And then one of the big takeaways they said was, they didn't realize how important Henrik Lundqvist was
Mhm.
until he was gone,
Mhm.
because that's such a luxury to say, yeah, that's our goalie. He's here forever. He's our guy. He's going to put up solid numbers. We know he's going to be that consistent guy. There aren't a lot of teams in the NHL that can say that.
Right.
And we've seen the Leafs goaltending was a carousel until Freddie came in and stabilized it. And even
Yeah.
then, Leafs fans are being critical of Freddie, which, I
Uh.
think they're entitled to, given, his history, especially in playoff games. Penguins fans were, spoiled with Marc-Andre Fleury as a guy for over a decade, and now you look at how many goalies we've burned through in the last 3 years trying to replace the guy.
Yeah.
It looked like we had Murray as a replacement. That didn't work out. Now we're looking at Jari, and it doesn't look like that's working out, although I think it's way too early to call. Carey Price in Montreal. Montreal fans don't realize how big of a luxury that is. Like, goaltending in the NHL is a luxury, and then goaltending at a reasonable like price, I think, is like, that does not exist. Like, there
Uh-huh.
are very few starting goalies in the NHL who have been consistent and who also aren't, costing their team significant cap.
Yeah, and like you said about the streakiness, especially in a 56 game season because of COVID, you just can't have that. And with teams playing with goalies playing inconsistent and being paid a shit ton of money, it can't happen. It cannot happen. Like, Bobrovsky cannot be playing how poorly he is for what he's being paid in a season in which we're playing.
Yeah, every game matters that much more. The
Mhm.
last thing to talk about with goaltending, since we're on the conversation, you brought it up earlier in terms of some names that are floating around. Uh, Not just with Pittsburgh, but I think more generally as well. Although, like you said, there are connections to Pittsburgh with both of these goalies. But like you said, John Gibson, and then
Mm.
also Marc-Andre Fleury has been lights out this season, and apparently the Penguins have been interested in trying to reacquire him. Obviously,
Yeah.
speaking of cap space, Fleury carries $7 million against the
Yo.
cap, and so there would need to be significantly retained salary there in order to make something happen. And then John Gibson is obviously, I mean, I think people don't talk about him because he plays for Anaheim, but if I had to come up with like a ranking list of goalies in the NHL right now, Gibson would be in my top five,
Top
maybe
three.
even my
Top
top
three.
three.
I'd
Like,
put him in
yeah,
top three.
exactly. Like, Carey Price, Connor Hellebuck, Andrei Vasilevsky, maybe,
Oh,
are the only three goalies I'd put
all
ahead
right.
of Gibson.
Maybe. I don't know. I'd put Gibson ahead of Price just because of what he's been dealt and how well he's playing.
I
Like,
mean, the Gibson's been phenomenal this year, and so
yeah.
my point goes out to you in terms of the goalie market, in terms of trading and everything that's going on. Do you think that those trades could happen? Do you see those goalies going not just to Pittsburgh, but potentially moving anywhere? Because we also talk about, for example, the Capitals have had to use Craig Anderson now as their backup goalie because
Wow.
their original starting goalie is down into the minors now.
Samsonov is in the
Samsonov,
minors?
yeah, and
Oh,
so they've been
man.
starting Vitek Vanacek as their starting goalie, and Craig Anderson as their backup. We saw the Leafs have to go through some interesting stuff in terms of they lost Aaron Dell, I believe it was, to waivers.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and because you mentioned with COVID, sometimes now you need a solid third goalie option because, if you lose a guy like DeSmith, wasn't on the bench last night. He was out because of sickness. It's non-COVID related apparently, but we had a Maxime Lagacé on the bench as well, and I don't know anything about this guy, so I couldn't tell you if he's a solid third option. But like, the fact that I haven't heard about him means that he's probably not. So, what are your thoughts in terms of the amount of goalie movement on like the waiver wire, on like the emergency backup, and then also, do you think that these big name goalies could move?
Um, I'm gonna be real with you. I would love to see Gibson play in Toronto. I really would. Like, imagine Gibson, like Freddie walks, and then we pick up Gibson in like a blockbuster trade. Nylander and Kerfoot to Anaheim for John Gibson and like a fourth rounder. That would be
You might need to throw in a couple first round picks with that one. Just saying, like, he's
well.
that good. He's
I
that
mean,
good.
we'll see if we can finesse Anaheim. We finessed other teams, so it's not impossible. I just wish Nylander was playing a little bit better, so his trade market was a little bit higher. Um, Hutchinson is our backup right now, and I got nothing against the guy, and neither does the Leafs. They love him. He's a great guy. They really wanted him to win, like when he was playing with Toronto. He, the problem was he wasn't, and you remember how frustrated I was watching those games when he was playing. You remember me ranting and saying this guy is the worst goaltender I've seen in a Leafs uniform. Granted, that may have been a little bit of an exaggeration.
I mean,
However,
Vesatoskala exists, but yeah,
bro,
no,
that's a
no.
goat. What are you talking about?
Hutchinson was he struggled. Let's
He
just say he
struggled.
struggled.
He struggled, and I'm always willing to give guys a second chance, but I'm not giving a guy a second chance a third time. Like I can't. Like when we brought in Jack Campbell, when Dubas said we're gonna bring Jack Campbell, I was so happy. Like he had been playing so well on a team that was so bad, like John Gibson. So when you bring in a guy who's very competent and really knows how to play, and like every time he's in net, I'm not afraid. He's 2-0 this season when he plays, with like a goals against average under a 2, which is fantastic. Um, at one time was playing better than Freddie, which was concerning in a little bit. And then here's what I say about that is Campbell could probably start. Like if Freddie walks, I could see Campbell becoming the starter. And so to answer your question, the backup goaltenders and especially the third stringers in this case are unbelievably important for a team because of how stricken this season has been to some teams. So if I'm a Pens fan, especially what you're going through, um, yeah, the only reason the only reason they really want Fleury back is because they want him to finish his career in Pittsburgh. Um, Also because he's playing lights out, like you said, 1-1 nothing against the Colorado Avalanche. Granted, they hadn't played a game in God knows how long. But to answer your question, yeah, I think having a third string that's good is very important, especially in this day and age.
Well, yeah, and I mean, you look at the teams that have that, 1-2 sort of two starting goalies. The teams have been successful. You look at Vegas, and here's the thing: like, if I'm Vegas, I might be reluctant to get rid of Fleury because of first of all, because of how fantastic he's playing, but also, Fleury and Leonard's probably the best 1-2 combo in the NHL. We've seen Montreal actually not only lean on Carey Price. They've gotten some really good numbers out of their backup
Yeah.
over there in Montreal.
Jake Allen, yeah.
Jake Allen. We've seen, maybe not so much now because of injuries, but, Colorado also considers themselves to have a pretty good 1-2 punch. Same in Dallas, injuries, we don't know how much of Ben Bishop we've seen with Hudobin there as well. And so these are teams who have had success regular season, have had success playoffs. Maybe you do need those sort of two goalie punch, and especially this year, like you mentioned, with COVID. And the last thing I want to mention in terms of goalies is talking about good goalies who play for bad teams. And maybe this is a team that hasn't played in a while either, but I also want to just give a shout out to Mackenzie Blackwood. Because if we talk about top goalies in the league, I think that's a name that never comes up, but he might just crack my top 10 goalies right now in the NHL. Like, you don't think about it because, well, New Jersey hasn't played in about a month because of COVID, and when they do play, they lose more often than they win. But it's not because of Mackenzie Blackwood. He has been an absolute rock for them in net. He was a rock for them last year in net on a garbage team. He's been a rock for them in, like, the 10 games they've played so far this year, and he's turning into a really damn good goalie to the point where people are talking about him might cracking the Olympic team next year. Like he's
Really?
developing that well. Yes.
Whoa. I mean, you know what? Credit where credit is due. He is playing fantastic. Um, Imagine him playing on a team right now like Carolina, who's got some goaltending issues, or like Columbus, who's got some questionable goaltending. Like if you put him on a good team, their success rate goes up 100%. And now it goes back to the point of saying guys playing on entry level contracts and they're did he resign?
I don't think he's on his entry level, but I can pull up his cap. He's not making a lot of money. I can tell you
No,
that much. He's
but
definitely on a team friendly contract.
it goes to show that it shows that guys who are playing on smaller contracts are playing better than guys who are being overpaid, which is interesting. It's really interesting. I'd like to hear your thoughts on why do you think that is?
Yeah, so first of all, Mackenzie Blackwood, He has 3 years left at $2.8 million per year.
How much? 3.28?
2.8.
2
So
point.
he is,
Not even cracking 3.
that's a very good contract for the New Jersey Devils. And obviously, with him having this year and then 2 more years on it, he's not going to get traded anytime soon. Although, like you said, it makes, like, if a team like Carolina or Columbus got him, it would certainly, like, especially Carolina. Like, if Carolina gets good goaltending, I
Wow.
don't, like, they might be good enough to challenge Tampa Bay in a playoff series. Like, they're that good. And if they can get that consistent goaltending, you definitely make a valid point there. And like you said, I think the main point of, why is it that, the goalies that make less make a big deal or make a
Mm.
bigger difference. It goes the same way. Like, I hate continuing to bring up Toronto, but I can look at other teams. Like, obviously the big thing in Toronto is, they have four guys making a combined $40 million, right? The thing in Tampa is everyone's like, well, how can they find the money to repay all these guys? And the answer is they don't. The only reason Tampa's under the salary cap is because Nikita Kucherov's like $12 million a year is being buried under long-term injury reserve, and when that isn't a thing that they can do next year, they're going to have to lose a lot of really good players. We were talking about this, I think, a couple of weeks ago. Guys like Blake Coleman,
Yeah.
easily gone. Easily gone. I mean, you look at all these teams. I mean, what's the main reason why the Chicago Blackhawks, the San Jose Sharks have had problems trying to rebuild? Good luck trying to rebuild when, Brent Seabrook's making $7 million a year,
Yeah.
eating up cap space. Good luck trying to rebuild a team when you're paying Erik Karlsson, Brent Burns, and Mark-Edward Vlasic, $30 million between the three of them. And
Yeah.
now you're trying to bring in, like, young players, right? And so that's what it just comes down to. You can't have too many bloated contracts eating up at your salary cap, because it looks like a really big amount. You have, like, whatever the cap is, like 70 something million, and you're like, oh, that's like a lot of money. But then when you're paying three guys $10 million a year, all of a sudden
Yeah.
it's not a big amount anymore. Like, the Leafs are spending like half of their salary cap on four players.
Yeah. And
You
one of
need
them is not performing.
you need 23 guys on your roster to win a Stanley Cup, at
Right.
least. Barring injury and, like you said, COVID this year, it's probably going to have to be more. Like, the taxi squad's going to be very involved in whoever wins the Stanley Cup this year. And so I mean, that's what it comes down to, right? You have to build the best 23-man roster. And so you look at the teams that have had success this year. Nathan McKinnon's contract keeps getting talked about why Colorado is able to have all those guys. It also helps that half of their elite players are still on rookie contracts. Check in
Yeah.
on Colorado in a couple of years. Why has Pittsburgh been able to be so successful? Because Sidney Crosby could be making 12 million, but he's only making 8.7. Evgeny Malkin could be making 12 million, but he's only making 9.5, right? And even then, they're talking about probably having to get rid of Chris Letang in order to free up cap space in order to make another run. And so, cap space is such a valuable commodity in the NHL. Having an elite player who is taking a pay cut is the best thing that you can do. And all the teams that have players who do that are all the teams that are successful. When you look at Colorado, you look at the Boston Bruins first line, that's a first line that should be making Toronto Maple Leafs like first line money, but they're not. And so I hate to keep bringing this up, Toronto fans, but, like, you look at the difference between Boston and Toronto. Matthews, Marner, and Nylander, right, are combined making $30 million, and then your second line center in Tavares is making another 10 and a half, 11. And then you look at the Boston Bruins who line up against you: Marchand, Pasternak, and why am I blanking on Bergeron?
Yeah. Wow.
Oh, geez, just forgot about one of the best defensive forwards in the history of the NHL.
That's okay. Nothing too serious.
Those guys, I'm not going to say that they're better than the Leafs top three. In fact, I think that if you look at moving forward, because they're younger, the Leafs are probably going to take the slight edge, right? But then when you look at their talent compared to how much you're paying them, the Leafs are paying those guys $30 million plus plus Tavares buried on the second line center. You look at the Bruins, they're only paying those guys, $20 million. And then where does that extra $10 million go? Well, it doesn't go to one guy on the second line like Tavares. It goes to, a competent defense depth at forward, right? And so I think that's where it's gotten, the Leafs have gotten better, where their depth is the best that it's ever been, which is probably one of the big reasons why they're first in the NHL right now. But I think when it comes down to it, that's the reason why. You just need to be balanced.
Yeah. Balanced teams win because no team is going to win just on forward alone. Victor Hedman contributed to like 66% of those overtime wins last season in the playoffs. So you got to get offense from your defense too.
Yeah, and you have to have those unsung heroes too. Like, you go back to the teams that have won the Stanley Cup and, who stepped up and delivered for them. I mean, part of the reason why Blake Coleman is not going to be able to stay on Tampa because he's going to get, $5-6 million contract somewhere else is because the guy was making $1 million, $2 million a year and was playing like a guy worth $5 million, especially in the playoffs. He was a fantastic piece for Tampa Bay. You go back to, how many players have won the Stanley Cup and then cashed in off of it, or how many players have stepped up in a big moment in the playoffs, making very little money. The Penguins were able to win back-to-back Stanley Cups with half of their D core being like guys who were given up on by the league, right?
Yeah.
Like the Oilers give up on Justin Schultz. He comes to Pittsburgh. He turns into something of a player. We can't afford to re-sign him. He goes and signs a big boy contract in Washington. Good for him. Make your money, right?
Yeah, like Bogosian was nothing in Buffalo, goes to Tampa and wins the cup.
Because you need those veteran guys.
Yeah.
Ron Hainsey on Pittsburgh.
Yep.
People don't talk about. He was an absolute rock on the defensive end. We didn't ask him to do much. Matt Cullen, fourth line center for the Penguins. He was just on a rookie min deal or on a veteran minimum deal. He's 4 years old, and the Penguins told him all you got to do is win faceoffs, kill penalties, and get the puck out of your defensive zone. Why do you think Jason Spezza? Why do you think Joe Thornton are coming to Toronto? That's literally what they're going to be asked to do. Just be solid in your defensive end, and obviously guys like Spezza and Thornton were way better players than Cullen ever was. So they honestly, if you can chip in offensively, that's an added bonus. But you're here to just be a veteran presence, make solid defensive plays, don't do anything stupid, and those are important guys that you need.
Also, Thornton's making his return to the Leafs lineup tonight after missing 10 games with a fractured rib, and he's going right back to that first line.
You'll love to see it. I mean, I think it's worked out. That's going to be a big return. An even bigger return, Stamkos is going to be making his return to the lineup with the Tampa Bay Lightning tonight. And, I mean, I don't want to talk about the same teams over and over again, but like Tampa Bay, they beat Florida 6-1 the other day, and it looks like they did it on cruise control, and now they have Stamkos coming back into the lineup. Oh, and by the way, they're doing all of this without Nikita Kucherov. So I know I talked about if, Carolina gets solid goaltending, can they challenge Tampa? And I think they can, but like realistically, is anyone stopping the Tampa Bay Lightning again?
No, I mean, I don't know. You and I both know defending a championship is one of the hardest things to do in sports. So I wouldn't be surprised if Tampa lost, but I don't think they will. I think they'll go back to back.
In the salary cap era, only 3 teams have made it to back-to-back finals.
And one of them is Pittsburgh.
Right, so you have Pittsburgh and Detroit in 2008-2009 played each other in back-to-back Stanley Cup finals. They split that, and then Pittsburgh went back-to-back in 16-17. And you look at the difference, like what did it take? Well, it took, elite level talent. You look at that Detroit Red Wings team, first of all, like Zetterberg, Datsuk, Holmstrom, Kronwall, Lindstrom, Johan Franzen. Like the list goes on and on and on. Like the amount of talent that was on that team. No surprise that they made it to back-to-back finals. And then obviously when you have Crosby and Malkin on your team, you're going to, like your chances every single year. So I agree, it's very tough. But when you look at this Lightning team, doesn't that match up to like what those other teams like? If anyone was gonna do it, I mean, it's possible.
But my problem is they should have already done it because they're that good. Also, quick question for you: who is a more talented player, Pavel Datsyuk or Connor McDavid?
You see, here's the thing, right? It's so hard to compare these kinds of players, and it's all super subjective. And like people always call me biased when I try to rank players and everything. McDavid, the reason McDavid is so much better than everybody is because the game right now is being played at such a high pace, and he has the top speed of everybody. No, he has the hands to go with it. I'm certainly not denying his ability to do other things. He's a good playmaker. He's got great hands. He is a pretty complete player. I think the only thing he's lacking is the defensive side of the game and some faceoffs, which are, granted, a very important part of your game, right? And I really would like to see him take that next step. I mean, I might as well talk about it. My one problem with McDavid is, like, I understand that he's going to put up 100 points in a 56-game season. That's just ridiculous offensive numbers.
Oh my god,
like,
that's
I can't take anything away from that.
That's insane
right?
to think of.
My point is, though, he's going to do that. The Oilers still might miss the playoffs, and he's going to be a borderline 0 ± player doing that. And so my argument is, I'm not going to say that doesn't matter, because absolutely it does matter. And we've literally just talked about how the Oilers need him to score or else they don't win. Like, literally one win in the last 3 years. And so I'm not taking that away from him, but, I think Oilers fans would rather McDavid put up 80 points in a season, be more solid defensively, they win more games 3-2 instead of losing a 6-5 game and McDavid puts up 120 points in a season, right?
Yeah.
Datsuk, when I compare him to Datsuk, obviously Datsuk doesn't play with the same speed, doesn't play with the same shot, like pure shot. But Datsuk has the best hands in the history of the NHL. I'm going to die on that hill.
I will too.
And the thing is, they were completely different players. And so I think it just comes down to, it actually worked out with the era that they played in. If I'm picking a player, like if I have Datsuk and McDavid both at 18, I have the first overall pick, who am I drafting? If I'm drafting in 2020, I'm drafting McDavid because of the speed of the game. If I'm drafting in 2000, I'm taking Datsuk because McDavid wouldn't have the time and space back then when, you could get away with holding and hooking and slashing like to the extreme extent, right? And so his speed wouldn't matter as much back then. Not saying McDavid wouldn't do well. McDavid would do well in any era of the NHL. But I think because the game has taken such a step to speed, he does so much better now. Where if he was back in the early 2000s, he'd still put up a point per game, but he wouldn't be doing, this end-to-end type shit that we see him pull like this year.
Yeah, I agree. I still think that I agree. Datsuk has definitely got the best hands I think I've ever seen in my career, and my life. Like, I have a career in NHL. Oh man, every time Datsuk is my favorite player of all time. McKinnon and Tavares are very close behind, but oh my goodness, when Datsuk got on the ice, here's the thing with McDavid and Datsuk that strike me as so similar. Every time they step on the ice, something magical will happen.
You're afraid. You're afraid.
Yeah, you're terrified. When Datsuk had the puck, you're like, oh god, he's going to do something. When McDavid has the puck, okay, I better start in my own end because he's just going to skate all the way here anyways. So I agree. I guess it's hard to compare in the sense of they played in two different eras of hockey, but it's similar in the sense that they're both extremely incredible at what they do and terrifying to watch if you're an opponent.
No, absolutely. I mean, the thing that the two players that if people who are hockey fans, recent hockey fans who didn't watch back then, Google Pavel Datsuk shootout goals, and God, insane. And then also, I think I talked about it a couple of weeks ago as well, but like Nick Lidstrom, since we're talking about the old school Detroit Red Wings, like in my opinion, Nick Lidstrom is the best defenseman not named Bobby Orr to ever play in the NHL.
I mean, I'm not going to disagree with you. That man is absolutely... But look at the talent he played with. I guess you can make the argument, look at the talent he played with. So, a lot of people will always hate.
Absolutely. But, like, the guy was... And if you talk to players, like, if you like listen to like Spit and Chicklets podcast or just like look at old interviews of players, they ask, like, if you ask anyone who played in the NHL between 1995 and 2010, who was the toughest person to go up against, 90% of those players would answer Nick Lidstrom.
Yeah.
Because he was good.
He was shut down, man. Watching him play, like, as a Pittsburgh fan, when they played each other, you were probably pissed off whenever he got on the ice.
Yeah, no, it was super frustrating. Like, I go back and I remember those series, and I'm like, the fact that we even beat the Red Wings in that series to win that Stanley Cup in 2009, like, I still don't know how we did it, because that was, like, like that was such a good Red Wings team, and the Penguins like still hadn't fully hit their stride yet. Crosby at that point was 23. Malkin was 24. They were still very young. And this was back in the old NHL where like veterans were that much more important. Where obviously we look at it now, you're 23, 24, the expectation is to win the Stanley Cup, looking at guys like McDavid, looking at guys like McKinnon, right? Which is, here's the other thing to talk about since we're kind of on this topic, just to sort of wrap up some hockey talk here. When you look at McDavid, and I don't want to do the McDavid versus Crosby comparison, and just so that I can get my bias out of the way, I think if, like, who's the better player right now, it's McDavid. Like, McDavid's the best player in the NHL right now. I'm not going to argue that. Like, if I had to pick who to take on my team right now, McDavid's a lot younger. I'm taking McDavid. But people who are saying that McDavid's like already like a better player than Crosby, or he's going to surpass like Crosby's legacy by the time his career is over, like I'm sorry, but no. But no, because like I haven't seen McDavid be a complete player yet in terms of the defensive side of the game, the face-off side of the game, and I haven't seen him make those types of plays. Like when I watch Crosby, like Crosby's a point per game player this year. He's been a point per game player every year of his career. But you also look at his positioning, and he gets back. He plays proper defensive hockey. Like the fact that this guy hasn't won a Selke is a crime against humanity in the NHL. I mean, I guess it's, once again, we talk about players, he was playing in a league where literally every single Selke went to either Pavel Datsyuk and then Patrice Bergeron. Talking about Datsyuk, the guy had silky hands. He was also a fantastic defensive player.
Yeah.
So, and this actually gets into the thing I wanted to say, where we talk about Canadian Olympic team, just bringing up Mackenzie Blackwood a while ago. When I look at what Canada should do in the Olympics, I think that they need to stack the first line with McDavid, because McDavid's a defensive liability. I'll go as strong as to say that. And so if I'm building Team Canada, my first line is McDavid, McKinnon, and Matt Barzal. I'm putting the 3 skilled, 3 speed guys on the first line, and I'm telling them, forget about defense, you just go try to outscore them. And then my next 3 lines are centered by Sidney Crosby, Patrice Bergeron, and Mark Stone. I have the 3 best defensive forwards in hockey right now. And I say those guys are skill guys. So those guys can match the offensive output that any other line is going to put forward, but they're also going to be shut down defensive hockey. So McDavid's line just outscores the competition, and then the next 3 lines are just shut down defensive hockey. I don't think that Olympic team is stoppable. But that goes to my point where I'm looking at McDavid like he's an offensive liability. I look at McDavid like, okay, the offense is like they're going to score 2 goals against his line, but he's going to score 3 goals against their line, right? Yeah. Where when I look at the other lines, like I look at a player like Bergeron, I look at a player like Crosby, I look at a player like Mark Stone, when they're on the ice, I don't think the other team is scoring.
Yeah, no, obviously not. And like you said, that's why the Oilers will probably never win a cup. Or in the McDavid eras, because they can't get to the playoffs because McDavid hasn't, like, look at Matthews. He's worked on his defensive game. He's playing 200 feet hockey now.
Absolutely. I have to give so much credit to Austin Matthews.
Yeah.
Like, you know me, I was I'm not going to say a hater, but I wasn't sold on Austin Matthews. I thought he was just I thought they should have moved him to the wing and basically played him like an Ovechkin, where the guy's a defensive liability, but he's going to score 60 goals a year, so it doesn't matter. And especially when you're on the wing, Ovechkin doesn't need to do a lot of defense on the wing, so it's not a big deal that he's not a good defensive player. But right. Austin Matthews has turned into a complete, Austin Matthews is a top 5 center in the NHL.
Well, I mean, he's getting over 60% of face-offs. I would hope so. Matthews to me.
Yeah, what would you do? Like, who's better in the center of the ice than Austin Matthews? Because you go Crosby, McDavid, but then outside of that, I think it's pretty tough after that.
Bergeron, I don't know how he's doing. Yeah, after that, I don't know. I really don't. And I'm not being genuine because I'm a Leaf fan, and you can all hate Leaf fans. That's fine. I'm okay with that. But I really don't know. He is.
No, that's my point. As a Austin Matthews, I'm not going to say, like I said, I'm not going to say hater, but as a non-believer of Austin Matthews,
there we go.
I would put him as the 3rd best center in the NHL right now. because Stamkos is just returning from injury.
Yeah.
Bergeron also, I think, had a little bit of injury trouble, and he's also like 36 now, so he's gonna take a little bit of a step back. Like he's right up there. He's been phenomenal defensively, and he's scoring at a goal a game.
Do you know who I'd put behind? And this may surprise you, is John Tavares. And the only reason I'm putting him behind is because of how important his offensive faceoffs are that he wins. He wins like 90% of them, which is, in this day and age, an unreal feat to do. So yeah, let's wrap up this hockey saying that McDavid will never win a Stanley Cup, and the Leafs have the best chance this year, in my opinion, to come out of that North and possibly make it to the Cup, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, I mean, like we said, we talk about the North Division. I think this is the Leafs' year. And then with McDavid, I'm not going to say never because that's a really strong word.
I mean,
but,
they had their best chance, I think, in 2017, and they blew it.
No, for sure. And then I think here's the other thing where the last thing to talk about, just because we have the McDavid-Crosby comparisons, right?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, like I know it's a team game, like so you can't blame McDavid entirely for the failures of the Edmonton Oilers. But if I go to Connor McDavid's career, right, this is now his his sixth season already in the NHL.
Wow.
Which is crazy to think of, right?
That is stupid to think of.
And so if I put him side to side with Sidney Crosby's career, and obviously McDavid has had a better, career in terms of awards, in terms of like honors from the awards perspective. But if we look at points and points per game and everything like that, it's crazy to think that Crosby actually does match what McDavid is putting out.
And you're forgetting the fact that he's won many, many cups more than McDavid.
And that's what I'm talking about. So if we go to it and we look at career statistics, Connor McDavid, year one, doesn't make the playoffs. That's all right. Crosby didn't make the playoffs in year one either, right? Year two with McDavid is the year that they make it all the way, like the year they go to the conference finals. Crosby's knocked out in the first round. So you start to think, oh, maybe McDavid here is up to something. The next 3 years for Connor McDavid, you have missed the playoffs, and then, of course, this past season, they were knocked out in that play-in round. You look at Sidney Crosby's next 3 seasons in the NHL, Stanley Cup Finals, Stanley Cup champion, and then second-round elimination. So that's where things really start to drop off for McDavid, where Crosby at this point had already been to 2 finals, already won a Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
McDavid's got to start doing that soon.
Yeah, and if he doesn't, then he's going to slowly but surely want to trade out of Edmonton.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what that would even look like. And, like, the other thing is, like, people are talking about, like, Darren Dreger reported Crosby to Colorado. Like, first of all, no, Crosby's going to be a career Penguin. Don't even talk about Crosby getting traded. But when you talk about players like that, like, yes, Gretzky got traded, so anything is possible. But, like, realistically, you're trading Connor McDavid. What are you offering in return? Like, you're offering your entire franchise for Connor McDavid? Because, like, that's what it would take.
Also, changed my mind. Crosby goes to Colorado, and they automatically, I think, in my opinion, win the cup right then and there. Like that would be stupid.
Well, here's my point. I'd say no, because what Pittsburgh would want in return? Like, if I'm trading Sidney Crosby to Colorado, and you can call me biased and say I'm overvaluing Sidney Crosby's trade value, I don't care. If I'm trading Sidney Crosby to Colorado, obviously the whole point is still Crosby and McKinnon can play together, so I recognize that McKinnon is untouchable. I'll respect that. I want Landeskog, I want Makar, I want Sam Girard, and I want 2 first-round picks.
And
minimum.
Here's why you're wrong. Here's why you're wrong. You're not getting Landeskog. He's the captain. Cale Makar, I can understand because he's one of the best defensemen in the league right now. Other than that, I would agree with what you have to say. You're not going to get Landeskog. I'm sorry. He's the captain of that team.
Yeah, that's a fair point. So, wait, who else plays with McKinnon and Landeskog then? Rantanen, sorry. So give me Rantanen, give me Makar, give me Sam Girard, and give me like a swarm of draft picks. And even then, I feel like I'm getting undervalued because Sidney Crosby, right?
Well, yeah, he's Sidney Crosby, but he's not performing like old Sidney Crosby. I'm sorry.
He's solid defensively, and he's at a point per game again this year. And I
Sure.
recognize that you only have him for maybe 3 more years, 4 more years at that level. So I get that. But like, that's my point is like, if I'm a Penguins general manager and someone's like, what is it going to take for Sidney Crosby? I'm naming off your three best players, your two best prospects, and first round picks. And then obviously, if you're a team, you're going to say like, okay, well, that's way too much. I'm walking away, which is why I don't think a trade for Crosby will ever happen. Same with McDavid, right? Like
Yeah.
if I'm the Colorado Avalanche and I'm like, okay, can we add Connor McDavid? They're going to look at you and be like, okay, well, we want like your entire defensive core, your draft picks for the
Yeah.
rest of McDavid's career, like, and your starting goalie and your coach and like a million fans,
We also
and
want.
throw in some like beer from Colorado, and
Yeah.
weed's legal there. So let's grab that over. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they'll literally want the entire city of Denver.
Yeah, we want the keys to the city. We want the whole state to be renamed McDavid's Paradise, and I get it. I get it. It would be very impossible, but it would. I mean, Colorado would look really nice after that. Don't get me wrong.
I mean, if they could still keep some of their players in return, they'll end up putting out McKinnon and McDavid only, and they'll still win the Stanley Cup.
Which is, I think, which is stupid. Like it's crazy to think of. But
Well, no, for sure. And I mean, we'll get to see that at the Olympics. Like, people who are talking about, oh, I want to see them play together. Well, you're going to have to wait another year or so.
yeah.
But when those Olympics roll around, McDavid, McKinnon, Crosby, they're all going to be on the same team.
Oh, that is disgusting to think about. Who starts goalie? Carey Price?
Yeah, that's my thing. When we talk about goalies, I mean, Carey Price is obviously the number one. I'm taking Carter Hart. And then the big question becomes, Jordan Binnington's probably right now in the number 3 slot, but we talk about guys like Mackenzie Blackwood. If Mackenzie Blackwood has, like, he keeps developing over the next year and a little bit, and Binnington struggles, I think that's probably what the third spot is. I think Price is a lock, Carter Hart's a lock, and then I think Binnington and Blackwood will fight for that third goalie spot.
That is a disgusting tandem. I don't see how anyone beats Team Canada at the Olympics.
Yeah, and then you look at Team USA's roster and you're like, well, if anyone's going to do it, I mean, I think the Olympics are going to come down to Canada versus USA, because that American team is stacked as well. You look at John Gibson in net, they have Austin Matthews down the middle, Jack Eichel as a 1-2 punch. Like, you're like, what's going to beat Crosby, McDavid? And you're like, well, Matthews and Eichel's like pretty damn good too. You know, you got guys like Johnny Gaudreau, Jake Gensel, Kyle Connor. Like, the United States is a very good team as well.
Okay, so it'll be John Gibson, but who else would be on that goaltending tandem? Connor Hellebuck.
Do you need? Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say, do you need a backup? And by the way, his name is Connor Hellebuck. Yeah.
So wow, we're really pushing time here. Maybe we'll just do a hockey talk today. So do you put Hellebuck over Gibson or Gibson over Hellebuck?
You see, I think that the starting. I think you name the team based on overall ability, and then you name the starter based on who's hot going in. So
Right.
I'm going to say I don't know right now. Like, even Carey Price, I don't think Carey Price is like, if the Flyers, like, obviously I really hope they don't, but if the Flyers go on another huge deep run in the playoffs this year, if Carter Hart establishes himself as an elite goalie and next year continues that form, if Carter Hart's coming as the hottest goalie, I mean, yes, Carey Price has been phenomenal for Canada at the Olympics, at World Championships, at World Cups. If Carter Hart's the hotter goalie, I'm starting Carter Hart.
Fair enough. Yeah, I
Right?
guess you're right. I guess it all comes down to who's going into that looking the best. I agree with you. But either
Exactly.
way,
That's what I would put up. But no, you're right. Either way, you can't go wrong.
no, like I feel like Tampa Bay is going to look a lot like Team Canada because of how unbelievably stacked that team is. Like you said, there's only a few teams that can stop them. I think only America will be, USA will be the only team that can stop Canada during the Olympics.
Yeah, because like Russia and Sweden and Finland have top end talent, but they don't have the same depth that the Canadians and the Americans do. And then if you look in the net, there are a lot of questions for those teams. You talk about how Canada and the U.S. have a problem in terms of how, like, who are they going to start, because they have two bona fide, like, elite level goalies at least. You look at Russia. I mean, Vasilevsky, like, Vasilevsky's going to be the goalie because Bobrovsky's been struggling, right? But you're putting all your eggs into one guy. Then you look at Finland and you look at Sweden and you look at the goaltending. Like, Sweden's going to have to figure it out because they can't lean on Henrik Lundqvist anymore.
So
right?
Who are they gonna put in that?
Exactly, right? And so you think about, and like there are even people talking about Russia. They're talking about, oh my God, why am I blanking on his name? The goalie who was in net for the World Juniors this year for Russia,
Uh,
Askarov.
Askarov.
They're
Oh
talking about
wow.
him potentially even making the roster because they're that thin at goalie, right? And
Yikes.
so, yeah, obviously it won't matter if he's the third goalie behind, Vasilevsky and Bobrovsky, right? I highly doubt
Right.
that he would get in there, right? But in the if I look at Sweden's team at the 2014 Olympics, right?
Okay.
Uh, you look at like the players that were on that team, and you look at their goalies, and you're like, okay, well, you can't really rely on that anymore. Like you look at Finland, Tuukka Rask, he's going to be he's probably still going to be around, but he's going to be a lot older. And then you look at Finland's goalies in 2014 were Antti Niemi and Kari Lehtinen backing him up. Those are not options anymore. You're going to have to find new guys,
So
right?
you do have Linus Olmark from Buffalo, who's actually been somewhat decent with Buffalo.
And so that's the point, is you're going to have to try to find those players. Behind Henrik Lundqvist at the 2014 Olympics for Sweden were Jonas Gustafsson and Jonas Enroth.
Wow.
Those are not players that are at your disposal anymore.
I can't believe Jonas Gustafsson went to the Olympics.
Yep. He
That's
was their
wild.
third string goalie, but the monster was there.
Oh man, he was terrible in Toronto. So yeah, so like you said, who are you gonna pull? Who Sweden won't do very much because they have like no goaltending.
Yep, and also they don't have the same depth that those other teams have. The Olympics are basically going to come down to Canada and the U.S.
U.S.
Just like how that's how I thought the World Juniors were going to go, and that's how the World Juniors went. And we don't
Yeah.
need to talk about that because still haven't recovered from that. But
You did you did call that. I'm not gonna lie, but
I
yeah, that
mean,
was not fun to
not really,
watch.
because I said USA probably going to be the only team, but I'm still taking Canada, and we'll see how that turned out. But yeah,
Mm. Yeah, it didn't turn out very well for Canada.
yeah.
Probably
Anyways,
probably. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, to quickly wrap up the podcast, just because I did mention it at the start, and I do want to at least address it. The
Sure.
Champions League is returning this week with the round of 16 fixtures, and I know we haven't really talked about a lot of soccer, and this is like the biggest event right now in the soccer world, and so I do just want to very quickly spend 30 seconds on each matchup and go ahead and give predictions. And so I'll read the matchup. I'll go first, and then Jacob, you can give your
Yeah.
prediction as well. Even though I know like you're not the most, you admitted yourself that you don't know the
Yeah.
most about
So
these
so
matchups.
guys, I don't really watch too much Champions League, if at all. So if my predictions are bad, you can roast me. That's all you want. You can be like, "Oh, this guy knows nothing," and you're probably right. I don't know much. So just a disclaimer.
Yeah, so we'll start with the big matchup between Barcelona and PSG, Paris Saint-Germain. I mean, look, Barcelona is still Barcelona, but we all know how much they've been struggling recently.
Yeah.
PSG also have been struggling recently, though, in the domestic league. So I think that a lot of people are going to kind of write this off and say Barcelona doesn't have a chance. I think they definitely do have a chance, but I'm still taking PSG.
I'm with you. Even as a longtime Barca fan, they just I this is like one team I've actually kept up with. They look so bad. I'm not gonna lie, they don't look very good right now, and so I don't think they have. I agree. I don't think they have much of a chance against PSG, who just seems to be playing a lot better, more consistently as well.
Yep. Porto versus Juventus. I think we can be very clear on this and very quick on this one. Look, Porto, congratulations, you're the best team in Portugal, but you don't have a hope against Juventus. They're going to win this.
Yeah, not a chance. Like legit, not a chance. Juventus is ridiculously good.
Yeah, although, once again, another team that has somewhat been struggling in the Italian league this year, but they'll have enough to see off Porto. Sevilla against Borussia Dortmund. This is actually a tough one for me to call because Sevilla, I think, are one of the most underrated teams in Europe, but they never make it to the Champions League. They're always dropping down into the Europa League and then winning the Europa League. Meanwhile, Dortmund, they have a lot of really good young talent. I'm very interested to see how the likes of like Haaland and Sancho do in this matchup. I want to pick Sevilla as an upset, but I'm going to take Dortmund just because I think they have the quality.
I think so too. I have no idea about these teams, but I think I know Dortmund a lot better, and I've heard their name being thrown around a few times this year, so I'm gonna go with Dortmund.
Atletico Madrid against Chelsea. This is another one where I'm a little bit iffy about because I'm a huge fan of Diego Simeone at Atleti. I think
Mm.
that they play a really strong defensive-minded game, but they're not the same team that they used to be. They're not the team that made those two Champions League finals a couple of years ago. And then Chelsea, though, also going through a transitional period. Obviously, they just fired their manager, Frank Lampard. They're starting a new era with Thomas Tuchel as their manager. I don't know if they're necessarily going to be ready for this. And so even though I think Chelsea are the more talented team, I'm going to take Atletico Madrid in this one, actually, because I think that the system and having an established coach and having the established game plan is going to make a big deal.
It's weird to think that Chelsea was so good years ago, and now people are really like not thinking they're gonna win. And I'm one of them. I don't think they're gonna win. I think they've had their period of excellency, and I think that's it for them.
Lazio versus Bayern Munich. I'm going to make this very simple. This has nothing to do with Lazio. Lazio are a very talented team. Bayern's probably the best team in the world right now. They're winning.
Yeah, there's no question there. Bayern is absolutely unbelievable this season.
And then same thing, Borussia Mönchengladbach against Manchester City. No disrespect to Mönchengladbach, they've had a phenomenal season. In fact, the fact that they even got out of their group is an accomplishment considering they were in a group with Real Madrid and Inter Milan. They were able to finish ahead of Inter Milan, but they're taking on Manchester City. I mean, maybe they'll
Yeah.
keep it close, but they're not advancing.
I okay then it goes to show maybe Manchester City is one of the best teams in the league right now.
Yeah,
I
well,
agree.
if it's not Bayern Munich, it's
It's
definitely probably
Manchester
one of those
City.
guys. Yeah.
Yeah, Man City's unreal. Like, even though I don't watch, I know how good they are, and I don't. Like you said, if it's not Bayern, it's Man City, and I think it's just gonna come down to that.
Yeah, and then we have Leipzig taking on Liverpool, and for those of you who know what the matchups are, maybe you know why I'm saving these last two because I have some upsets coming up. I do not trust Liverpool. Their defense are way too injured. They've been terrible. They're playing extremely poorly, and I think Leipzig will be up for this challenge. They know that there is a beatable team lining up against them. Leipzig had a phenomenal run last year in the Champions League. I'm picking Leipzig in what maybe isn't going to be considered quite the same upset that it would have been considered a couple of months ago, considering Liverpool are struggling, but still a significant upset. I'm taking Leipzig.
I'm gonna disagree with you. I think Liverpool, yeah, they're struggling, but overall, I think they're just a better team, and I think Leipzig will put up a good fight. But I don't think they're gonna beat Liverpool. I really don't.
Yeah, no, I think Liverpool will still be looked at as favorites, so I'm definitely picking an underdog there. And then in what is going to be my exceptionally bold pick, Atalanta versus Real Madrid.
Oh,
I'm
I know what
going.
you're gonna
I'm
say
going
here.
Atalanta. I'm
Yeah.
going Atalanta. Like Real Madrid have stabilized since their early season struggles. I recognize that, but this was a team Real Madrid that had to win on the last day of the group stage just to get out of their group, which is something that we would have never said about Real Madrid like years ago when they were making the final literally every single year and winning it literally every single year. Atalanta are like for those of you who don't watch soccer, watch Atalanta play. They are one of the most exciting attacking driven teams that you'll see. Real Madrid have a significant weakness at defensively, so I think this will be a high scoring tie, and I think Atalanta just outscores Real Madrid. I'm taking Atalanta.
I don't. I know Real Madrid. I've known that team. Obviously, not the same team they were years ago. You know what? I'll go with you. I'll shake up the pot. Atalanta's gonna win, and I think you know what? I think it's not gonna be close. I really don't. I think it'll be like 3-0 or something.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think Real Madrid will score, but like
No,
I definitely think that Atalanta could really explode for goals. I mean, we've seen this Atalanta team absolutely capitulate defensively and allow a bunch of goals, but then at the same time, we've seen this team just absolutely score for fun against teams, and I really think that they're capable of doing this. I mean, if we go back to some of their games this year, they've struggled at times. They lost 5-0 to Liverpool, but then they beat Liverpool 2-0, right? So we know that they're capable of scoring for fun, and I think that they'll do it against Real Madrid.
I mean, at the end of the day, all these teams have the same chance. They're all in the same spot. It just matters on are you good? Do you want it more than the other guy? And that's what it's going to come down to.
Absolutely. All right, before we wrap up, any closing words that you want to say?
Leafs are winning the against the Senators tonight, and it's going to be not even close. I'm calling at least 6 goals.
I mean, at this point, that might as well just be a lock. It's like we're recording this the day after it happens. And now watch, we both jinxed it, and the Senators are going to
Yeah.
win, and Matt Murray's going to get a shutout. So
Yeah.
I'll do the
Oh,
reverse
man.
jinx. Matt Murray, 74 save shutout tonight. Get ready for it.
Beautiful. Beats Corpusalo for the record in the. Oh no, he did in the playoffs. So I guess he'll make a regular season record.
Well, at least we know Matt Murray's not breaking any playoff records anytime soon with the Ottawa Senators. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, gotta get there first.
Exactly. Anyways, we thank you guys for listening to another episode of the Benchwarmers Sports Talk podcast. If you're listening on YouTube, feel free to drop a like on the video. If you're listening anywhere else on a podcast channel, feel free to give us a follow and a 5-star rating. We appreciate it very much. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next week.